Okay, this is the second video for the 7.12 lesson. It's called The Immigrant Experience. We were in the midst of the reading, and I believe we were actually on this paragraph right here, starting with Henry Ford on page 536. Is this? Yes, 536. Henry Ford borrowed the image of the melting pot for use in his auto factories in Detroit. After his immigrant employees completed classes in civics and English, they took part in a graduation ceremony. They entered in old world clothing, passed through a large replica of a melting pot, and emerged dressed in American-style garb. Some critics objected to the idea of a melting pot. Nativists saw the idea as a threat to their belief in the supposed cultural and racial superiority of white Americans. From an entirely different perspective, other critics objected the melting pot was little more than a form of assimilation in which the best defining qualities of various peoples be lost in a mostly white Anglo-Saxon mix. Writing just a few years after the melting pot opened on Broadway, Horace Kalin, a Jewish immigrant to the United States, proposed an alternative idea, which he called cultural pluralism. Kalin argued that immigrants did not need to be melted down into a new identity. Rather, they should retain their distinct cultures and traditions and coexist alongside native-born Americans. Some refer to this idea as a salad bowl theory of immigration, in which the various ingredients are not blended together as each retains its own integrity and specific flavor. In this hopeful view of cultural pluralism, various cultures would not be divided by self-interest, but bound together by shared commitment to democracy and diversity. And here's a poster theater program for the play The Melting Pot. And here's a part of the play there. And we're not going to read through that at this time, but you can look at that because it is rather interesting. Okay, so make sure that your reading guide is completed, that you filled it out as you read through, or that you're using the lesson answer key to help you fill out those answers. And then we're going to look at the online Statue of Liberty activity. The people of France presented the Statue of Liberty to the United States in 1886 as a gesture of friendship between the two countries. For millions of immigrants making the trip by sea across the Atlantic Ocean from Europe, the Statue of Liberty was one of their first glimpses of America. Explore in detail the Statue of Liberty. One of the most prominent sites in New York City is the Statue of Liberty rising high above the waters of New York Harbor. A gift of friendship from France, the statue symbolizes the spirit of freedom. To immigrants, it represents America's policy of welcome as well. The statue's creator, Friedrich Bartholdi, thought deeply about these concepts and added details to reinforce them. Move your cursor, as you can see, I'm already moving my cursor. Move your cursor over the numbers to see the details. Okay, number 1, the torch. The torch is a symbol of light leading the way to freedom. The torch has been modified several times as lighting technologies have changed. Number 2, there is 2. Head and crown. The 7 spikes on the crown represent the 7 seas and the 7 continents of the world. The 25 windows on the crown symbolize the 25 gemstones or natural minerals that were known in 1886 and heaven's rays shining over the world. I love the symbolism. I love symbolism. It's always so neat to see what people think of and how they're going to symbolize it in statues or other ways. The book tablet. On the tablet is inscribed July 4th, 1776, and those are Roman numerals, of course. The date of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The tablet, which represents the Book of Laws, is shaped like a keystone, the stone in a building that keeps all the other stones from falling apart. Law is the keystone of the United States. Without law, freedom and democracy would fall apart. Number 4, the body. The robe or toga represents the ancient Republic of Rome. The material for the long, flowing garment had to be lightweight, easy to work with, attractive and tough enough to withstand harsh weather and the salty harbor air. The creator of the statue chose copper. Number 5, the feet. Broken shackles lie on the front of the right foot to represent breaking the bonds of slavery and tyranny. The heel is raised as if walking to symbolize the first step into independence. Visitors can see these details only from the torch or from an aircraft flying over the statue. And number 6, the pedestal or the base. The 13 layers of granite represent the original 13 colonies of the United States. The pedestal rises 89 feet above its foundation. It is said that for the statue to fall over, the whole island would have to turn upside down. And that would be insane. Okay. Nativism and immigration. As defined by Merriam-Webster, nativism is a policy of favoring native inhabitants as opposed to immigrants. In the early 1880s, the vast majority of Americans were native-born. They were born in the United States. By this time, there was a distinct American culture with American norms and traditions. When immigrants arrived in the first wave, beginning around 1820, they were met with a strong nativist reaction. Many old stock Americans, those born in the United States, harbored racist feelings towards some immigrants, were distrustful of them, and began to oppose immigration. Today you'll learn why this nativist reaction occurred, how it manifested itself, and how the federal government responded. And that is what we read about, of course, in today's lesson. I guess I got a little ahead of ourselves here. Let's look at the Chapter 23 highlights now. Immigrants came to the United States in increasing numbers during the 1880s. They were pushed by factors such as the decline of small farms in Europe, famine, and religious persecution, and pulled by factors such as abundant work, cheap food and land, and political intolerance of religious minorities. Major immigrant groups and where they settled included Irish in large northeastern cities, German and Scandinavian cities and farms of the Midwest, Eastern and Southern Europeans mostly in the Northeast, Eastern European Jews mainly in New York City, Chinese and Japanese, the West Coast and in the West. The century of immigration to America occurred in two waves. The first was about from 1820 to 1840 and was made up mostly of immigrants from Northern and Central Europe. And that's what we did back in Unit 4. Remember you had to write that letter home? And that was the basis, talking about that first wave of immigration then. The second wave of immigration from about 1880 to 1924 was dominated by Southern and Eastern Europeans. So remember that there's going to be a difference in how they were assimilated, how they were treated because of their different nationalities, different religions, different looks. There's going to be a difference between that first and second wave of immigration. Castle Garden was the country's first official immigration center, but it was replaced with a new facility at Ellis Island as immigration increased. Angel Island and San Francisco processed immigrants from China and Japan. Immigrants arriving at Ellis Island were treated fairly well, submitted to interviews and physical examinations, and were processed relatively quickly. Asian immigrants arriving at Angel Island were treated poorly, then processed slowly, and were often turned back. Immigrant groups were held together by strong family and ethnic ties, as well as by a network of ethnic churches, synagogues, schools, newspapers, theaters, fraternal lodges, and banks. Immigrant groups adopted American values and traditions while preserving their ethnic customs and identities. Tensions between immigrant parents and their American-born children often ran high, and a generation gap resulted from differences in outlook. Many immigrant groups faced discrimination, threats, and violence from nativists who saw their cultural and religious traditions as suspicious and un-American. Opposition to immigration grew so intense by the turn of the century that a congressional commission was formed to study the issue. The Dillingham Commission issued a report that denigrated immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe and prepared public opinion to support new anti-immigration laws in 1920 and 1924. And then you can take your 7.12 quiz, and that will cover information from the 7.11 and the 7.12 lessons about immigration. So make sure you review those two lessons before you take your 7.12 quiz. Good luck on that. And then from there, you'll go to the 713 lesson preparing for the unit test. Good luck on your quiz.